Hi everyone, my name is Paige Regan and I am a Communities Coordinator here at ASUG. I apologize for the delay in our webcast today due to some technical difficulties, but we're extremely excited to have you join this ASUG webcast, how Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota simplified the SAP user experience with no custom code. We appreciate your participation today. You can find your personalized webcast listings each Monday, and you can visit asug.com events for more webcasts. Today's webcast is being recorded, and the slides will be posted to the ASUG website as well as emailed to all registrants. Please feel free to type any questions in the Q&A box throughout the duration of the webcast. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. August 31st through September 2nd, ASUG will be hosting the SAP Analytics and Business Objects Conference. You can learn more at sabak.asug.com. The first practical analytics workshop will be taking place simultaneously. Join us for a 3-day hands-on analytics training course for business users. Our annual SAP Business One Summit will be taking place in Austin. You can learn more at b1.asug.com. We're excited to announce that on October 14th through 16th, we'll have our annual Canada HR and Payroll Summit in Toronto. The event is complimentary and will focus on core HR, payroll, and other human resource-related topics. ASUG's Influence Department encourages you to see the future through SAP's customer engagement initiatives and improve current solutions through the Customer Connection panels. You can register at influence.sap.com. ASUG is proud to announce that once again, ASUG and SAP are joining together to be partners in education. Please be sure to attend an ASUG pre-conference session at TechEd on Monday, October 19th in Las Vegas. Now I'd like to turn it over to Damien Chen with the User Experience Community, who will introduce our speaker for today. Damien?
Yep. Thank you, Paige. Good morning. I'm Damien Chen, ASUG User Experience SIG Chair. First of all, I'd like, again, this is just to build in on, okay, give me 1 minute. Let me transition my screen. Yeah, so this is just to build in a little bit of what Paige was saying. We actually intend to introduce, okay, the screen is jumping a little bit, so let me try one more time. Okay, so on October 19th, we actually plan to have for those of you that are going to TechEd, we will welcome you to a UX pre-conference, how to make your user experience awesome and your business user happy. The objective of this pre-conference is basically to expose to you what is a UX strategy, what is the tactical plan associated with the strategy, and even some hands-on. So the whole idea is we do know based on our last survey, there's a lot of people still questioning what is a UX strategy, what tool am I supposed to use, how do I measure it, and so on and so forth. So the whole purpose of this pre-conference is to give you a 1-day session and teach you all this stuff. So what we aim is at the end of the day so that you will be able to learn how to create, plan, build, test, deploy, measure, and continuously improve the new UX solution. Other than this, on the actual session itself on October 20th, 20 to 23rd, we have more than 48 UX-related sessions planned, and the session is divided into user experience and design, UI clients like Fiori Launchpad, HANA, and Network Business Clients, SAP GUI, SAP Fiori, and also user interface development. So for those of you that's going, we will really look forward to have you there. Okay. Now, let's move on to our webcast for today. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for joining us today for the part of our webcast. I would like to thank Eve Mellon, John Gilman, Phil Bass for today's webcast on the subject, How Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota Simplified the SAP User Experience with No Custom Code. Eve is a senior functional analyst who has been with BCBS, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Minnesota, for 18 years and was a key internal champion of improving user experience there. Phil joined Clear Software from AP use. His primary responsibility are to expand the global sales and marketing effort. And we also have John. And John is the founder of the Clear software and was the primary developer of the original Clear UI product that stemmed from his over 20-plus implementation of SAP, working for Accenture and Deloitte, and hearing the common refrain that SAP is difficult to use. Without further ado, let's hear from our presenters. John and Phil and Eve, feel free to take over.
Thank you, Damien. Everybody, this is Phil Best with Clear Software. Just a quick little overview of what we're going to be touching on today before I hand it over to Eve. Specifically, today we're going to be covering hopefully the things that you would expect. What were some of the drivers that were coming to Eve and her group from from a user experience perspective. As well as, I'm sorry, I'm getting some jump on the screen here as well, so please bear with me. There we go. Again, I apologize. So the learning points today, certainly what did BCBS of Minnesota look for in terms of a UX solution and why. The people that were involved in the decision process, certainly why they chose to move forward with Clear UI, and some of the key findings before and after implementation. We'll then hand it over to John and jump into the solution overview, and then we'll take time for question and answer. Certainly we're excited to be presenting to you all today. Fundamentally, we feel we have something that is going to change the game in terms of user experience with SAP, and we're very excited to show that to you. With that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Eve.
Hey, you guys. Thanks, everybody, for joining, and thanks for letting me tell our story. So Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota is located here in the beautiful state of Minnesota, small town called Eagan. If anybody is flown into Minneapolis Airport, you have flown right over my building. Anyways, I've been here at Blue Cross for 18 years. I absolutely love what I do. I've worked with the SAP team since 1998, started off as a business acceptance tester, and it has just blossomed from there. So it gives you a little bit of background that I, too, have been an end user who hated the looks and feels of the screens and who was nervous she was going to forget which T code I needed to use. And I don't know if anybody knows this, but I'm an avid biker. So if you have any questions about biking, I'm the Lance Armstrong type of biker, not the motorcycle type of biker, and I love to easily get distracted talking biking. But in the meantime, let's go back to why did Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota look for a solution for our user experience? Number one, like Damien said, we want to make our business happy. And at the time, I was the business. I hated the screens. I hated the paths. And I hated knowing that I had to remember 9,000 T codes. My colleagues also didn't like how many times they had to type in a new T code, how many times they could only drill down so far before they had to get out and go into a different T code. Here at Blue Cross, we only allow 5 SAP screens to run at one time, and it was impossible to get all of your information in those 5 screens when you're on the phone with a caller. Our CSR time was huge. We were taking calls that were running minutes. Everything is tracked for time. We needed a solution that was a one-stop shop. We had lots of options to consider. We thought about building a homegrown app. We did run a smaller homegrown app, and we thought, well, let's just expand our little Java app and make it work for our customer service. And we looked at the benefit of building it internally ourselves. We weighed the cost of what it was going to take us to build that Java and what it would cost us to maintain it. The costs were huge, and the costs were high. We looked at, yes, an Access database, Lord forbid. And that was just, our accountants all flipped on us, and that wasn't even a viable option. Happened to run into John Gilman at an ASUG meeting once out in New York City for FSCD, and he said, hey, Eve, we have this platform. Let me present it to you. Let me show you what we can do, and guess what? You guys don't have to code it. Well, I was the happiest person coming back here to Minnesota when I heard, hey, we've got a solution. So it took a whole bunch of us to make the decision, right? It wasn't just me as the functional analyst, but I brought in the Vice President of Finance, Denise. I brought in the Senior Director of Operations, Chad. And I brought in the SAP Basis team, and I said, okay, guys, this is an opportunity we have to make our business happy. Let's give them screens that is a one-stop shop. And John presented this to us, and they loved it. The Basis team was extremely excited. The configuration and functional team on SAP was extremely excited because there was no custom code we had to maintain. So, what this did for us, it was a quick implementation, which, as we all know, implementations are usually long and drawn out. This was a quick implementation for us. Took a single Basis person here at Blue Cross to do this for us with John. And we were up and running quickly. Presented it to the business, and the first reaction was, oh my gosh, I have to learn new software. And then the second reaction was, oh my gosh, now I have to learn a new password. Well, what we did then, hearing this, is we added Clear UI to our ESS link, our ESS portal, which is our SAP portal. It is a one-stop shop for them. They can log in. Everybody here at Blue Cross uses our ESS portal, and it's a tab that they log now into using their FSCD roles or their FIGL roles, whichever role it is that they have. They log in, and it's a single sign-on for them. They don't have to, it's the same password that is set throughout the rest of our company. It's the same user ID that's set throughout the rest of our company. There is no software they had to install. Our end users started to become really happy with us. The point-and-click experience, we had counted once that it took, and John, please, if I get the number of transactions wrong, I'm sorry. From what it used to take 25 transactions or 25 T codes, they now have with a single login and a search function. We are ecstatic over the time it has saved our customer service. We are ecstatic over the reconciliation that we can easily do between the general ledger and the sub-ledger FSCD. And actually, I've used it a lot more in reconciling than I thought I ever would. If somebody calls and they have an incident or a ticket, I log into Clear UI to see what I see there first before I even think about logging directly into the GUI to see what I see. I can usually answer my questions 99% of the time. The only thing that I don't have are my jobs that are running through SM37, which maybe, John, in the future, let's talk about that. Anyways, we have saved a ton. 6-week return on investment. I don't know which screen slide that you guys are actually seeing, but we did have a 6-week return on investment. It was quick, it was easy, it was painless, and our end users love it. I'm quickly going through my notes to make sure that I haven't forgot to tell you anything. And I think I am good. But I am more than happy to answer anybody's questions about how us as an end user and our customer service area is answering questions about our members on their claims recoveries or on our general ledger. So please keep my name and number. And John, I think I'm going to leave it up to you now.
All right. Thanks, Eve. That was a pretty awesome overview. So to give you guys a little bit of background on who Clear Software is, we were consultants from the Deloitte, Accenture, kind of Big Four world, and we'd been implementing SAP over and over and over again, and we kept hearing the same complaints from our users. We actually implemented FSCD for Even Team, with Even Team at BCBS of Minnesota. And the same questions that I'm sure you all have heard were, why do I have to open up so many windows to get my job done? That was a big one. But probably the most important one that we would hear again and again was, it takes me longer now to do my job than it used to. And just if you take out a stopwatch, that's easily verifiable. You can have an old green mainframe screen where you have everything you need. You can get everything done in that mainframe screen, and suddenly that gets translated when you migrate to SAP to 7 or 8 or 15 or 20 different transaction codes. So it was taking business users longer to do their job. So we started to think, well, we're developing this training documentation over and over and over again. And it's always go to this transaction code, then this transaction code, then this transaction code. We started to see a pattern that was really cross-industry. Everybody does have very specific customization that they've done in their SAP systems, but the processes are basically the same. You invoice customers, you collect payment from customers, you pay vendors, and really the only thing that's different is your configuration, some of the customization you've done, and what fields you want to see on your screens. But the underlying business process is still the same. So we started to think of a way to sort of streamline all of these transaction codes into one single web page where if I'm a business user, this is the only web page I come to do my job. So I'm switching to the next slide here. So we created Clear UI and showed it to Even Team, and they really liked it. What it is it's an HTML5, highly configurable, and we put that in bold because we're actually going to show that in a few minutes. It's very configurable, and it's a cloud-based platform that streamlines everything you do into one simple and easy-to-use web page. So we're going to take a look at some accounts receivable functionality, some accounts payable functionality, but the fundamental idea is I never leave this page to do my job if I'm a business user. So I'm actually going to share my screen. And bear with me a moment while I resize the screen share. So can everyone see my screen? Okay, looks good. Like it's buffering. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to log out and talk a little bit about Clear UI from, let me just make sure there's a little bit of a delay, so I'll make sure I take my time when I toggle between screens. So just a little bit technically about what's happening here. So this is a web layer, basically a browser-based wrapper around SAP. You don't have to install anything on your users' PCs, no Java plugins, no Silverlight plugins. This natively runs in any browser, all the way back to IE7. And obviously we don't support IE6, but nobody does because nobody's really using IE6. But there are some customers that are still running IE7, IE8. So you need to be able to support all of those. But the fundamental idea is you don't have to install anything on your users' PCs. You send them a link, and they can log in with their SAP username and password. If you happen to be using single sign-on or SAML, we can essentially bypass the screen and authenticate against the SAP system, and your users would never have to actually type in their SAP username and password. I'm just going to make sure that, there we go, okay. So I come into this initial page here, and the way that my user profile is set up, I by default go to accounts receivable, and that's something that's configurable. But it pulled in my SAP full username based on my user profile. And down here in the lower right, it brought in the system and client that I'm logged into, as well as the authorizations. So I have SAP all, so I have all 3,000 SAP authorization objects. But the reason we want to highlight this is this drives everything that you can see and do in Clear UI. So it drives the solutions that you have access to, the pages within a solution. So when we talk solutions, generally we're talking about different SAP instances or different third-party instances of systems. So up here, some customers will run industry solutions. So Blue Cross is running FSCD, which is a subledger for insurance customers. And a lot of times they'll run that on a separate server, and they'll run their ERP system on its own server. But what we want to do is give users a single interface so that we can point these solutions to those SAP systems, but the user never leaves this web page. So within a solution, we're looking at ERP here. Since I have SAP All, I can see all of these different business processes here. And then within a page or a business process, the tabs, sections, and fields that I have access to are also based on SAP authorization objects. The reason why we want to highlight that is to use this, you don't need to rebuild any of your user profiles. You've already spent a lot of time during your initial SAP implementation making sure the right users have the right access to different pieces of functionality. So we're just taking advantage of that and doing a one-to-one mapping between these objects and your authorizations in SAP. So what I'm looking at here in accounts receivable is really about 40 different transaction codes streamlined into one web page where I can do everything related to a customer. So when I go in to grab a customer, you'll notice based on my browser history, I have the last 10 customers that I've looked at. I can also search for customers using SAP standard searches. I'll give that a second because I'm sure it will take a minute to load in the screen share. But one of the most common things we see our customers do is once they have a piece of master transaction data loaded, they can save that as a favorite. I'm sure a lot of you out there deal with certain problem customers on a repeated basis. And we don't necessarily say problem customers, but high maintenance customers. And you can organize these favorites inside folders in your browser. And that's something that you don't really have to train users on how to do because they're used to doing it through their daily web browsing for personal use. So we're trying to take advantage of as much intuitive functionality that people already know how to use without having to retrain them. So when we talk about accounts receivable, as a specific example, I can immediately see customers' details, all of their contacts, phone numbers associated to either the master account or to a specific contact. This alone, you'd have to jump through a few screens to see the different phone numbers on an account. When I click into general data, for some of you larger SAP installs out there, you'll have different company codes set up. And to see how a customer is set up differently in two different company codes, you actually have to get in and get out of XD03 twice. Same story with sales areas. If you have multiple sales areas and partner functions dependent on those sales areas, you have to jump in and out of SAP screens to see that as well. We just display it right away. You can immediately see that this customer is set up in two company codes, two sales areas, and you can toggle between those sales areas to see the different partner functions. Probably the most important feature that our customers love, and I'm sure Eve would agree with this as well, is the account balance tab. So in the AR world, you've got to go into VL10N a few different times to basically sum up data from different fiscal years because you may have had an open receivable at the end of 2014, and then the payment came in from the customer in January of 2015, and to actually get a true real-time account balance view of that customer, you have to toggle between different fiscal years. You can come into this tab right away and see that the customer owes you $50,000. Everything's single click in Clear UI, so I can actually drill into that receivable, and it's going to take me down to this maintain document page, which is where you can create and park different GL postings, but you can also view different receivables on customer accounts. right away you can see the T accounting. From a UX perspective, we actually got this idea from Julie Peterson, who works with Eve at Blue Cross of Minnesota. But a lot of accounting users were taking documents, financial documents in SAP, and they were downloading the data to Excel and creating T accounts in kind of a user-friendly format that they were used to seeing to sort of reconcile the postings. We thought, the data's there. Why not just represent it in a way that's friendly to these general ledger users? And then obviously you can see all the item data associated with it. But then to get back to what you were looking at before, you just click back in the browser, and it takes me back to that customer record. Some other cool functionality, a lot of you definitely use generic object services in SAP to create attachments on customers and notes. You can see that right away in a user-friendly format, and then you can create and update these attachments directly in ClearUI. And then a really powerful feature is the ability to bring in third-party data. So really any system that's mature and has APIs and stored procedures for you techno. Okay, sorry, I got disconnected. Eve, Phil, Paige, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. For some reason, I got disconnected. So we talk about integrating third-party applications like Salesforce, for example. There's a very high, above 95% chance that many of you out there have many different IT platforms that you're integrating to deal with customers and vendors. Salesforce you might be using for CRM or even Microsoft Dynamics. In order to truly get a 360-degree view of your customer, you need to be able to integrate third-party data. So, say for example, I can bring up quickly my invoicing history from SAP and see all the different invoices. That might give you a good picture of where that customer is going to be in terms of billings over the next few months. But unless you can see some upcoming opportunities in Salesforce, you're not getting a true full picture of what's going on with that customer. So before we jump into kind of this quick menu feature, some other nice usability features wanted to highlight. The ability to hover over configuration values and immediately see the descriptive text is huge because it allows you to keep your users informed about what those config values mean, but at the same time, it's not going to clutter up the screen with a lot of extraneous data. And then even when I'm in change mode, for example, I can click into one of those cells and immediately see all of the values associated with that config option. This is huge from not just a usability perspective, but also for data integrity. A lot of times you'll have users that will type in invalid state codes. So they'll say, well, we got a new customer in Alaska. I'm going to type in AL. As you're typing along in ClearUI, it basically filters that list down and shows you that, well, AL is not Alaska. It's actually Alabama. So simple things like this actually cut down on data entry errors by about 90%. So I'm going to jump back into display mode here and talk a little bit about probably the second most popular feature in ClearUI that our users love is this quick menu. So single-click access to, for example, get a history of sales orders. And then I have single-click access to click on any one of those sales orders and see the detailed data associated with it. Same story with invoices. A lot of you out there are probably using OpenText or FileNet or Documentum to store PDFs of your customer invoices. So it's going through SAP's archive link. We've just built single-click access here, so you can pop up immediately a PDF of that invoice. There's the beautiful out-of-the-box invoice in the system. Make sure everybody can see that. Okay, good. And you can have that open, so when a customer's actually got you on the phone, you can be looking at what they have in their hand and comparing it against their real-time account balance. So I'm going to take you through the entire order-to-cash business process real quick without ever leaving this web page. So I'm going to go in and add a sales order. And this is probably the most common business process across all SAP customers, so that's why we like to show it. But as I'm clicking through, obviously I can see the config values right away. I can select them. The date pop-up is something that's from this century, so it looks pretty slick, and it's easy to click and enter the correct date. I'm going to select the material for the sales order and a quantity, and I'm going to go ahead and simulate this and go get the pricing from the SAP system. And what's really cool here, and we want to touch on this, I can click this checkbox to automatically create the invoice. And in the background, what Clear UI is going to do is it's going to call a BAPI to create the sales order. But then once that's done, it's going to copy all of that sales order information to an invoice and post that invoice on the customer's account, update their account balance, all by just clicking this little checkbox. To do that in personas, it's not even really possible. To do that in Fiori, you'd have to basically create a custom function module for any of you techies out there. In that custom function module, you'd have to call those two BAPIs. Then you'd have to create a custom OData service to consume that custom function module, and then create a custom page like this in Fiori to be able to consume that custom OData service. So if you just heard the word custom a lot, that's because there is a lot of customization involved kind of building out your own Fiori apps. And we initially built this platform on Fiori, and at about 30 or 40,000 lines of custom ABAP code, we said, all right, we can't use this platform. So we actually rebuilt it on native HTML5 with, as we're about to show in a few minutes, the ability to customize the different functionalities that you want to use without having to write any custom code. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save here, and it's going to create that sales order and then copy it to an invoice. So just to show you it's not all smoke and mirrors, that sales order number ends in 199. When we close that sales order, you see the account balance has gone up to 100,000, and there's a new receivable. If I click on that invoice reference, I see that there's my sales order. So it all ties back. And to complete the order to cash process, I can then click Pay. So again, eliminating a transaction code with a simple little drop down. I click Pay on that item. Everything's pre-populated, so from a CSR's perspective, they don't have to key in any of this data. They can select a GL account for this manual payment and click Save, and it will post the payment and update the account balance real time. So if I'm a power user on the accounts receivable side, this is the only page I ever come to do my job. I can do everything I would ever need to do. And the concept translates across all of ERP. So when we talk about accounts payable, for example, I need a 360-degree view of my vendors with a real-time view of their account balance, for example, and the ability to add requisitions, carry them through to purchase orders, and add customer invoices or vendor invoices. You can do that all from this page, and even sort of paginate through the purchase order history on a vendor account. So then if you're in AP, this is the only place you ever come to do your job. If you happen to be in HR, same story there, 360-degree view of your employees. So you'll hear us say that again and again, that 360-degree view of it's really whatever your job is, whatever department you're in, you're coming into one page to do your job and get everything you need to get to do everything quickly and efficiently. When we talk about customization, everyone always says, well, yeah, this is great. You've exposed 95% of what we do out of the box, but we have all these custom fields, and we want to move stuff around. How can we do that in your solution? And we've made this very user-friendly, so I can actually scroll down a bit. Oh, sorry, there's my thumb there. The webcast is not letting me scroll all the way down. Refresh here. I'm going to have to stop sharing for a second and resize my screen. Apologize about that. There we go. Okay. Make sure everybody can still see my screen. Give it a second. Okay. So I had to resize to get my full browser in this view. So I'm going to click Customize Layout. And what's really cool is I can now, as a business user, go through and edit the layout of these sections, delete sections I don't want to see. So, it's 2015. A lot of people aren't using fax numbers anymore, so you can go in and delete this section. But what's really cool is everybody always wants to rearrange the way addresses look in any system, not just SAP. So what we've done is allowed users to be able to go in and sort of drag and move fields around. So, for example, I can pull country here down past zip code. You're going to see on the screen it actually moved country past the zip code. And if you want to add a new field, for example, you want to see the first phone number on the page. What's now going to happen is you see the first telephone number is shown up, and you want to customize the label because you don't like first telephone number. You can do that, and you see that right on the screen it's updated the phone number. You can also update the labels in the sections if you need to. So if you don't like address details, you can just call it address, for example, and it updates the label to address. And basically what we're doing is saving all this and creating a database-driven user experience. So what then happens is we have all of these fields pre-mapped to all the different APIs that exist in SAP for some of you technophiles out there. And 99% of the time, you're going to be able to map those fields to an existing API. If you've added a bunch of Z fields to tables, it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. Your business users will be able to bring it into the application, but then either Clear Software or some of your technical folks will then have to map that field to the appropriate API. That's how we customize the layout. The beauty of that is we can deploy this very rapidly because, number one, we're just using SAP's authorization framework. So we can tie, like we said before, all of this to SAP auth objects. But number two is we only use SAP standard APIs in our pre-delivered solution. So the BAPI at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota is the same BAPI that exists at Brown-Forman. So you're able to have your users up and using this in about 5 minutes in a sandbox or a dev environment. Some other features before we kind of start to take some question and answer and finish up. Obviously, the ability to run reports. You have different transaction codes in SAP for all these different reports. But what we've done is streamline it into one simple view where I can come in, for example, and run a wide open report on sales orders in the system. And I can tweak the layout of the report. I can put in filters if I need to. But if I run it wide open, I can get this results list and then quickly export that to Excel. We talked to an SAP customer in Indiana last Friday who mentioned that they have a department where they're creating queries and exporting them to Excel for different areas of the business that don't have access to SAP. And that's basically what they're doing all day long. So they love this feature because they looked at it and said, we could basically expose this to those users and allow them to generate these reports by themselves, so we don't have to be burdened with that annoying task. So I'm going to stop the screen share and move back to presentation. So obviously, you're all here because you're interested in UX, and what does that mean for Fiori and personas? How does that compare to Clear UI? So personas, obviously, it only runs on ERP. So if you're running CRM and SRM, you'll have to basically explore other UX options. Fiori does support non-SAP data and those other systems, but as we alluded to before, there's a lot of custom code required to get a Fiori app up and running. Clear UI is prepackaged. You don't have to update your kernel or anything to run Clear UI. It can run from day one. So if you're on version 4.6 and you haven't even upgraded to ECC 6.0 yet, you can use Clear UI. There are no versioning requirements of SAP to use Clear UI. Obviously, no SAP development required is huge. No end user PC updates, and being able to go live in less than 30 days. What we're doing is basically getting rid of the concept of transaction codes. Personas is great if you have one single transaction code that you want to improve, but most SAP customers want to improve the entire user experience, the entire business process. So being able to streamline those 40 different transaction codes we showed for accounts receivable, you'd have to spend years and years and years custom coding to make that happen in Fiori and Personas. So that's really where we try to distinguish ourselves and say we're against custom development, and if you have to request a transport to get your user experience the way you want it, that's scary to us. So no transports, no custom code. That's kind of our mantra. And then obviously, how does this benefit? What UX problems are we solving? Biggest and most important piece is increased productivity. As IT budgets and business budgets get pushed, and you're having to do more with less, obviously a solution that gives you everything you need in one web page allows you to get more done with fewer resources. Less training, you keep it simple and intuitive. People don't have to take 2-week training courses every time they get onboarded into your business user community. Rapid implementation, being part of a user community where we standardize business processes is huge. You go down the road of building your own user experience, you're a community of one. So when it breaks, you really have to do a lot of research on your own. You can't share your experiences with other SAP customers. And obviously cleaner data through the simple drop-downs. And from a CIO's perspective, a lower total cost of ownership is huge because you're not writing all this custom ABAP code to support either a custom Java app, custom .NET app, or a Fiori application. So I know we only have about 9 minutes left, so I think it's a good time to open it up to Q&A. And I think, Damien, you said you were going to sort of moderate the Q&A. Is that right?
Yep. That's right. Let me ask the first question. So could you combine information from 2 or more transaction code into a single screen?
Yep. So what we showed actually in accounts receivable was about 40 different SAP transaction codes streamlined into one screen. And then even in that sales order pop-up we showed, that was really VA01 and VF01 streamlined into one little pop-up.
Okay, so basically, I presume somehow within the pop-up you can actually transfer information from one screen to the other then?
Yep, so when we looked at those mapping rules, we're mapping the fields in Clear UI to APIs in SAP. And if we had a little more time, we'd love to show the kind of rules engine that we have, which is basically we're storing the sequence that you call different APIs in SAP. That's what allows us to, for example, link VA01 to VF01 because those two transaction codes, they both have BAPIs. We can call them in sequence and with our mapping, map the fields to the appropriate values from a sales order to an invoice.
Okay. Second question, could we create custom logic to check field compliance? Example, we want our user to follow a certain naming convention for material master. It must start with 3 digits followed by a dash, followed by 3 character, followed by a dash, etc., etc. So basically, in other words, they basically wants because standard SAP, as you know, do not check for field compliance other than basic simple material number, field length, and things like that.
Yep, absolutely. We have a lot of requests specifically with customers in the U.S. to require users to enter 9 digits for Social Security number. So the field in SAP, I think, allows you to enter, 10 or 12 characters, but they need to be able to restrict it to just 9 for Social Security number and then do kind of a check on it to make sure it's valid. So what we're doing is abstracting that, taking all those rules out of, normally you'd have to create a custom transaction code in SAP and implement your logic through some DINPRO screens. We're just taking that out, putting it in our database basically that allows us to then call those rules on save and on update to make sure that you're adhering to those entry rules.
Oh, cool. Next one. Could you tell us what is the software hardware prerequisites? Example, what version of SAP backend do I need? What additional software we have to install in-house?
None. That's the beauty. You can start using this in a cloud-based manner. You can start using it right away without installing anything. And you can use it on any version, well, I shouldn't say any version of SAP. You can't use it on R2, but I don't think anybody's using R2 anymore. I think they decommissioned R2 in about 1993 or something like that. So,
I still heard of somebody that used it.
Yeah. So when R3 came out, that's when SAP started exposing BAPIs and stored procedures. So really anyone running R3 upward, any version, you can start using ClearUI.
Okay. Now, just as a reminder for attendees, if you want to, you can basically type your question in the Q&A side. So feel free to just sort of type your question directly in the Q&A panel, and we'll try to answer that. Okay. Next question I have is, okay, maybe this one is more for Eve. How long does it take before a typical configurer could be productive in creating a customized screen, a basic customized screen?
It doesn't take configuration, right? The customized screen is at the end users. If they want to move something around like John was showing, it's up to the end user. It doesn't take IT customization.
I see. So the end user... Yeah. So the end user is basically doing their own customization, or do you have a special IT people that are actually doing the customization for them?
Nope, it's their own. It's okay. The end user is making the screen look like how they want to.
Okay, cool. That's all the questions that we have. I don't see any more questions coming out. Maybe we'll let it open for another 1 minute. If there's none, I would suggest that we will close this. Okay. Paige, you want to take over?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Damien, and thank you to our presenters, Eve and Philip and John. That was a wonderful presentation. This does conclude our webcast, and on behalf of
I'm sorry, there's one more question that came up. I'm sorry. So we have 3 more minutes. So,
let's answer them.
This one basically says, do you have an architecture picture to answer it? I think it will be hard for us to show it in the screen here. Maybe Phil or John can send us an architecture diagram and then append it to the presentation file for us then. Okay. I think that's all I
Yep.
have, Paige.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, wonderful. And as mentioned earlier today, the slides and recording link, which will be correct, we hope this time, will be emailed to you and will be accessible on asog.com. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Eve.